Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott McKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
All right, once again, thank you very much for joining Industrial Talk, the platform that celebrates industry professionals all around the world because you're bold, brave, and you dare greatly. You're changing lives and you are changing the world. Thank you very much for your support because we are on a mission to elevate industry professionals to the right level, and they are heroes in this particular podcast. And we also are broadcasting from OMG Q1 right here in Reston, Virginia. And it is, once again, the members of OMG and Digital Twin and all of the other consortiums and then some are all passionate about solving problems, and they're debating. Right behind these doors, they're debating certain standards, and they just make our lives better. So give them a big howdy-do and go out to omg.org. Find out more. You will not be disappointed. In the hot seat, Claude. Cebe. Did I get that right? Cebe.
Yes, it is cebe, and it means Claude Baudoin, IT and Knowledge Management.
There you go, man. See? I like that. See, there you go. Check it out, man. Now I got it. I like it. You having a good meeting?
Yeah, it's actually, we've already had several sessions. It's not finished, obviously. We're here until Friday noon. It's only Tuesday evening. There's lots of things going on. We're debating the kind of standards we could potentially develop to help industry in areas like business modeling and artificial intelligence and cloud computing.
How long have you been a part of this organization?
I actually was at my first OMG meeting, I think in Orlando, Florida in December 1992. So it's just over 30 years. Door. I have not been at all the meetings between in those 30 years, but I'm probably approaching my 100th OMG meeting.
Oh, man.
I've seen everything.
You're a legend.
I've seen everything from the early development of Corba to the development of UML. I remember the year when people were telling me that it was too early to create a standard for object modeling, and then the next year they were huddled in a room in San Jose, California, doing a standard for object modeling.
Hey, gosh, you're a legend, man.
The stories I could tell you.
Oh, I can only imagine. You know, what's interesting is as I continue to be to work with OMG and engage many of the members, what I found is that a sincere appreciation for what the members and everybody they do here, right? And you know, I have strengths and weaknesses. One of my weaknesses is I can't do what you guys do and be able to get into that level of detail on a standard and debate it and hear it and really ferret it out. So when you come out with something, you launch something, you publish something, there's a high level of confidence that it has been thoroughly vetted.
The strengths that a lot of people have, and a lot of people here have it even more than me, is their technical competence and their experience. The weakness we have is that once we get embroiled in this and involved in this, we can't stop. So some of us are essentially almost donating our time to this cause of creating standards for industry, regardless whether we're being paid this month or not, or whether we travel on our air time or on our air miles or not. Yeah. You know, we do it because we feel that it is going to enable industry to do things.
That's noble. I got to tell you, that's special.
So our former chairman, Richard Soley,
know him well,
whom you know, used to say, we're not here to create standards, we're here to create markets. And the markets are the markets by the companies that make software tools to develop models and systems. And in order for them to be successful in the market, they need standards so that they don't have to develop a different program for every client.
Yeah, again, I see the value of it. I just do. I think that there's an efficiency there, and there's a commonality. There's a common lexicon. I don't have to. Digital Twin is Digital Twin over here at Digital Twin because you've created that commonality.
When we create the Artificial Intelligence Task Force, which is one of the ones I lead, I use the words reduce friction. I said we're going to
Yes.
reduce the friction for the software developers and for the users by defining some common formats, common language, maybe a common ontology. This afternoon we were talking about a common taxonomy of trustworthiness in AI. So that's the kind of work we do.
Boy, do I have some questions about AI.
Everyone has. You should ask ChatGPT. Maybe it would answer you.
Yeah, because thank goodness for ChatGPT, because boy, it has put a laser beam focus on AI and where it's going.
Yeah.
But it's been around, but for whatever reason, ChatGPT, boom.
I think it's because people suddenly developed those large language models and they were able to suck in millions of documents. And all ChatGPT does is create a reasonable synthesis of what it has learned from those documents, and it has the ability to put it in very correct, compelling almost English or French or Spanish or whatever, and that has value. The problem is when people ask ChatGPT stupid questions, they'll get stupid answers.
Yeah.
And we need to recognize that. We need to use ChatGPT for what it's good, not for stupid things.
Yeah, but then again, everything that revolves around AI, and I'll just use it from a macro perspective because there's always exceptions. There has to be an organization like yours and others, especially here, that creates sort of boundaries, I think, or, you know.
We've got to define scopes. I was talking earlier today to people from NIST, the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, and a lady from UC Berkeley from the Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity, who's done a wonderful paper recently that links the risk management framework of NIST to the notion of trustworthiness. And we were precisely discussing scope issue. Where do you define the scope so that it is tractable? Because if you don't define the scope well, you're going to try to boil the ocean.
Yeah.
You're going to try to define the ontology of everything. And people have been trying to define the ontology of everything since Socrates and Plato, and no one has succeeded. So why would we? So let's be honest with our capabilities. Let's define one particular area, like risk and trustworthiness. Let's model that. And then we can define something else, like the issue of data quality in industrial systems, and do models for that. And then there's going to be a connection somewhere, maybe about safety. Is a system trustworthy because it's safe, and is it safe because it gets correct data from the sensors?
Oh, yeah.
That's how we need to think about that, I think.
Yeah, but we're still at the beginning of it. I mean, there's still so much when you were here, you're here. You know, when you're here, you're here. You're here. What's your focus here at OMG?
So I have three things because, again, as I said, once you get involved in this, you can't.
It starts asking more of you.
People start asking more, and you forget that the word "no" exists.
You can't because
so.
You have a big heart.
One effort is the Business Modeling and Integration Domain Task Force. We are the owners, or the custodians, I should say, of the Business Process Modeling Language (BPMN), which is really widely recognized as the methodological way of defining processes and workflows. So that's one thing we do. But there's an entire family of other standards. There's things to model what people in the healthcare industry call cases. A case is something that's somewhat unpredictable. Someone comes into the emergency room and you have a bunch of data, you have a bunch of processes that you can invoke, but what are you going to do first? Are you going to start applying a tourniquet, or are you going to do an EKG?
Yeah.
So you can't define the process in advance. When the person comes in, there's not something that says do A, then B, then C. It says look at all the data you have and decide dynamically what you're going to do. So that's a different modeling language for that. It's called CMMN, the case modeling notation. Case management model and notation, sorry.
Don't worry about it. I wasn't taking any notes on it. I was like, I'm just dazzled.
And then the people in the healthcare industry have created this community called the BPM Plus healthcare community, where BPM Plus means business process management plus case management plus decision management, etc., in order to standardize the course of actions taken in institutions like the VA hospitals, so that when someone moves from one location to another and resume care with a different provider at a different hospital, the same clinical procedures are going to be followed to provide continuity of care. So that's something that our standards enable. So when you think, oh, OMG is doing this esoteric stuff to model processes, but it's impacting how veterans are being treated in veteran hospitals around the country.
I'm always dazzled.
So that's one thing. That's one thing I do. Another thing I do, as I mentioned, there is an AI task force that started about 3 years ago. We're still in our infancy. We're still deciding what these things could do. But there's different languages that are used in there. There's different models. There's all these libraries of image files that tell you, this is a dog, this is a cat, and it helps the AI learn how to recognize cats and dogs in future pictures they haven't seen before. Well, the language is used to describe those files, and the bounding box within which there is a dog or a cat or a fire hydrant, there's often a dog and a fire hydrant together.
Yeah, absolutely. Common.
There's multiple such languages, and they're not standardized. So if you're a company developing an AI, and you get 2 training files from 2 different sources, they're not going to be in the same format. You're going to struggle. Often people say we spend 20% doing AI and we spend 80% massaging the data so that the AI can understand it. So what if there was a standard that says this is the standard format for a file that tells you what objects are in the image? Then everyone would stop spending 80% of their time massaging the data before they can do their AI work. So that's one of the things we're trying to pursue.
I have to ask the question, and this is 2 of 3, so I'm not forgetting the third one, trust me. Is that right off the bat, the bandwidth, just time, and time is like the great equalizer. Innovation, technology, speeding. It just seems like it's maybe because I talk about it all the time, but it just seems like there's a doggone velocity that I can't keep up with, and yet you and others are working diligently. It's like the pinch point is time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find that there are things that I handle very thoroughly. There are other things I have to skim, and there's, unfortunately, things that I have to not pursue just because I don't have the time. But I think one of the tricks, to me at least, is really being voraciously open to receiving input from whatever it is. So I can see a snippet of information that I get on Flipboard on my phone one evening, or I can have a conversation at lunch with someone very briefly, and I just try to make sure I don't lose any of that, and later on it comes back and I can reuse it. Someone yesterday on LinkedIn was asking me, do you know someone I could talk to about bringing data back from offshore to onshore through satellite in the oil field industry? And I'm like, I know someone, because I talked to them, and I looked at my computer last night and I found my notes from December 2019, having had a conversation with that person. You've got to have a huge capability to retain information, to index it, and then you can regurgitate it to people in meetings like this or in normal interactions with people.
All right.
It was just an example, but I mean, this happens to me all the time.
Because there's people that are interested in knowing what's going on. I mean, they're searching for an answer, and they don't want to recreate the wheel. There's got to be a way of being able to make that.
Unfortunately, there are too many people who recreate the wheel, and that is why the standards are such a challenging area in some cases. There was a cartoon once, I think it's an XKCD cartoon from the ex-NASA guy who does XKCD, where the first panel says, we have 14 standards for this. This is too many. How can we deal with that? And then the second panel says, let's create another standard to unify them all. And then the third panel says, well, now we have 15 different standards.
Very truthful, by the way. Number 3, give us the number 3 that your AI, and you had one other organization.
So the other organization is the Cloud Working Group. So it started as the Standards Customer Council, CSCC, with IBM sponsorship in April 2011, and it published something called the Practical Guide to Cloud Computing. And we've continued since then, and in 2018, so almost 5 years ago, it became really part of OMG as the Cloud Working Group. We've published about 34 different guides and papers, how to migrate to the cloud, how to adopt it, how to check that your provider is giving you a good service level agreement, how to do interoperability, portability, how to worry where your data is located. You know, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your data is?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Et cetera, et cetera. So we do this work regularly. Right now, I've started working on a paper. I'm leading that, but I have 6 co-authors, 5 humans, and ChatGPT. On myths and realities of cloud computing. So I asked ChatGPT, please tell me what are common myths of cloud computing. And it gave me a pretty reasonable answer. So I enrolled it as one of my co-authors. And
That's clever.
We're trying to tell people how to see through the marketing speak of the providers and not be, taken by some of the exaggerations. But we're also trying to dispel the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, because there are people who are rejecting the cloud for the wrong reasons.
But that's an ongoing, you have to constantly. There's an education gap.
That's why I can't retire.
That's right. But look, you have hair. You look great. Why retire? Why retire? What are you going to do when you retire?
Oh, I often joke with people here. If I want to do something interesting for free, I have plenty of charities I can work for.
I was just going to say, but true. What are you going to do? There's no way you can retire.
Oh, I can work on my genealogy, which goes back to the late 1500s at this point.
Okay.
I can classify my 3,000 slides that I have never scanned.
No. And then somebody's going to come to you and say, hey, I've got this thing. And
so I did. I published
it. Pulled right back in.
For 12 and a half years, I published a newsletter twice a month. So there's 300 issues. And then I finally stopped. But I'm going to mine this and find what are the things that have shelf life. Some of these articles have are no longer interesting. But there's a few that have held up. And I'm going to compile them and put that on a wiki and do things like that.
All right, one last question. On that sizable list there with 3 things, did we cover everything, or do we need to cover something else that it was a gap? And I want to make sure that you give your due attention.
The only other thing I had, is like I was thinking, what would be the conclusion to this? What would be my message? There's a large scope of work that still requires to be done about business models, about AI models, about managing data, about managing processes, and people should come and talk to us and offer their wisdom and their experience.
I look at it this way, and I'll be the first to admit this, that the world is moving, and at a minimum, you need to actively seek out at least how to get involved.
Right.
Small,
Exactly.
large, mid, doesn't matter.
No contribution is useless.
See, there you go, right there. I'm going to put that on a bumper sticker, and I'm going to just put your name below it.
All right.
How do they get a hold of you?
You can email me at claude@omg.org. That's the simplest address. My professional address is different, but since we're at OMG here, use Claude, CLAUDE, @omg.org. That will be the best way.
I like it. Like it a lot. You were absolutely spectacular.
Thank you so for having me.
I enjoyed the heck out of that conversation, and it was good for me. I like it. All right, listeners, we're going to wrap it up on the other side. We're going to have all the contact information for Claude and then some. You need to be reaching out to omg.org. You need to be reaching out to Claude. It is important because you need to participate and you need to know what's going on. And you get great and big-hearted people wanting to help you. So that's a great place. Trust them. So we're going to wrap it up on the other side. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
You know what I'm thankful for? I'm thankful for Claude. I'm thankful for people like Claude. I'm thankful for OMG. and the consortiums, because they debate these standards. They create these standards so that we can create new markets for industry to do more. It's truly a noble endeavor, and I am truly appreciating the fact that they do that. And, you know, we just take it for granted. These are unsung heroes within industry that's creating these trustworthy standards so that we, industry, can do more. How about that? We just don't know about it. And every time I go to these OMG events, I am always shocked by the level of professionalism, the level of passion that each one of these members have to do what is right and to constantly think. They never stop thinking. I always feel like, wow, I don't, you know, level up to them, and I don't. I'm honest. I could just be their cheerleader by highlighting the fact that this exists out there. All right, that's Claude. Cebe, that's CEBE is the company. And all the contact information will be out there on Industrial Talk, as you are well aware. All right, as for a platform, Industrial Talk is that platform, is the platform to tell your story. I would love for you to reach out. I would love for your continued support of all of these individuals like Claude, because they're doing so much, and you are doing a lot too as well. So go out to Industrial Talk, find out more. All right, be bold, be brave, dare greatly, hang out with Claude, and you will be changing the world. We're going to have another great conversation coming from OMG shortly, so stay tuned.